Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Continuing our run through of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Right now we're up to the episode called Inquisition, the 18th episode of the 6th season, aired on April 8th, 1998, written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, directed by Michael Dorn, Worf behind the camera. In this episode, an officer from Starfleet Department of Internal Affairs arrives at the station and accuses Dr. Bashir of being a Dominion spy. We're joined by Clay, who's not a Dominion spy. Clay, how are you?
Or am I?
Could be.
It's nice to see the guy who plays Death in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey on a Star Trek episode.
Oh yeah, that is him. Like that. Not that I was like searching for who that was, but that it's like very obvious that that's who he is. Actually, that's interesting.
Yeah,
he's got a recognizable face.
He's great.
Yeah,
he pops up and stuff all the time.
Very good actor. Very good.
Yeah,
I think he's very
definitely.
good. Very good in this one. I guess we'll just we'll eschew the morning little chatter here at the start, and we'll get right into it. So I'm going to take a break. We're going to play a clip, and then me and Clay are going to come back, and we're going to break down Inquisition.
I'm sorry you're going to miss your medical conference. It couldn't be helped. In a case like this, I have to follow strict procedures.
Yes, I understand.
Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. The last time you tried to attend a medical conference, you were taken prisoner by the Dominion.
An experience I wouldn't care to repeat.
I'm sure you wouldn't. But 5 weeks in a Dominion prison camp? I can't imagine what that must have been like.
Not pleasant.
I read your report. It made me ask myself how I would have held up under those conditions. I guess you never really know until you go through it.
I'm sure you would have been able to cope. We do what we have to survive.
To start this one off, Clay, I think that I'll have to ask you a question here. This is because this is an episode with a twist, right? This is all a dream kind of an episode that we were talking about in Far Beyond the Stars. For whatever reason, this one to me, I wouldn't say that it suffers, but I spend the entire episode aware that this is not really happening to Bashir. And there are some other episodes that, like, the twist is coming, but I can still kind of sink into it a little bit. And I don't know if that's a problem of this episode, but did you, as a new person to this one, recognize that there was something wrong, or was the twist when it was revealed the awareness point for you?
No, I knew it was coming.
Okay.
I haven't seen it before. I didn't know anything about this episode. But yeah, I didn't know what exactly it was, but I knew it was coming. I don't know.
They're not very subtle with it. They do a lot of hinting that something is wrong with Bashir's point of view, and it's weird because I think it's almost like it's nicely directed in a lot of ways. Like they pay attention to these small little visual clues and the teddy bear tipping over and stuff like that. And there's all these weird, strange things. I think the biggest first thing that probably points you out that something's wonky is when Bashir talks to O'Brien and he's like, Julian, they're asking me questions about you. Get out of here now. And then the thing shuts off. But yeah, it's. I almost feel that they overplayed their hand a little bit with the sort of weirdness of it, but maybe that's the point and the tone of the episode that they were trying to go for. But I don't know. I was just curious if you picked up on it, and you obviously did. Yeah,
it felt kind of Prisoner light to me. Like this felt like it could have been an episode of The Prisoner if you replaced "Are you a Dominion spy?" with "Why did you resign?"
Right.
You know?
Yep.
But I didn't find it as engaging as an episode of The Prisoner. And I mean, I guess it's probably unfair to just compare it straight to The Prisoner. But it felt like I liked the idea. I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought the best work that they did to throw you off the path was when he actually gets snatched by Wayoon.
Yeah.
Because that scene, I was like, all right, I mean, obviously this isn't real. This is something screwy's going on here. But that scene, I thought, was the best scene they had that was working towards convincing Bashir and everybody else that this might be real.
Right.
But at the same time, I felt like how do I put this? It felt to me like they were really excited to debut Section 31.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, everything kind of felt like it was rushing towards that last scene where they just talk about what Section 31 is for like 5 minutes.
Yep. That's my favorite scene of the episode, actually.
Yeah, it's good.
I think my problem with this is that I don't enjoy all of the holodeck "Is This a Dream" stuff, because I feel it's a little bit like, knowing that I knew what it was and you obviously understood it, you know that it's just kind of killing time to get to somewhere. Like, I thought that the best part of the entire lead up of the Bashir holodeck sequence is how they pulled in all the prior Bashir episodes to make it really seem like a convincing case that he is someone who would be with the Dominion.
Yeah.
I think that's the best part of what they do with the early stuff. Unfortunately, it feels a little bit predictable, and we've been there before and seen all this kind of stuff. So the reveal of Section 31, where they talk about Section 31, is to me the best part of the episode, because that's actually playing with the idea of what this organization is in this universe. And that's more interesting than the head game that they want to play with it. So Section 31 does come back in this, but I feel that I would have rather they spent time with Section 31. And it's also, this is kind of a tainted episode for me, because I'm sure we're going to talk about how Section 31 is portrayed here versus Discovery's Section 31.
I do have some Discovery thoughts that I would like to get into at some point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so did you have any thoughts about, like, I guess just we can talk about the holodeck thing and then get into that. But I kind of think this episode is overrated. It's a little highly regarded, but I don't enjoy the holodeck sequence as much as the exposure thing at the end. I think that the way that Bashir figures it out is clever. I like the tying in of all the Bashir parts. I think they overplay their hand a little bit, that you know, he's walking through DS9 in handcuffs, and they're like, oh, what have you done? Like, where are these people coming from, and Starfleet Command and all that stuff. But outside of that, it feels like it's spinning its tires to get to the ending, and then the ending is only about 5 minutes. Yeah.
The strangest part about it for me was at the end, after they reveal everything, when Bashir's back on Deep Space Nine, and they're all talking about it, and nobody even knew he was gone.
Well, he was on vacation.
They set it up that way, but like, I feel like it would have been more interesting and impactful if what Sloan was actually doing there was the thing he was actually doing, and then the Bashir thing was just kind of like an offshoot of that. So he actually was there on Deep Space Nine looking for a spy, so everybody was
aware
kind of
that
on
he
edge, and it wasn't all just fake, Yep.
So you would have had the setup where Sloan actually arrives pretending to be looking for a spy, and then during that they actually put Bashir on like a DS9 holosuite to do this test of him.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because otherwise, I don't know why they go that extra step to abduct him in the night while he's sleeping or whatever. I don't know. I think it would have been a more interesting story to just inject that what's the word I'm looking for? Like light paranoia actually onto Deep Space, because they've had that problem before, because there was a changeling running around for a while. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I think the problem with that would be that Section 31 is so secretive that you can't they become exposed if they let more people know, even if they don't say that they're Section 31. But if Cisco ever checks in and says, hey, why did Internal Affairs come visit us? And Starfleet's like, what are you talking about? So I think Sloan can't really reveal himself to that extent, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I felt like it was, like you said, they were kind of spinning their tires, kind of trying to get to the end and really kind of lay out what Section 31 is.
I like the spinning the tires stuff. Like, I don't dislike it. I just don't think it doesn't really, for how cool it is, I would expect it to grab my attention a little bit more than it does. Like, I was watching, it's like, this is fine. Everything's okay. I like the acting between the two of them are great and everything like that.
Yeah, I think if it were up to me, have you ever seen the movie The Trial with it's an Orson Welles movie with Anthony Perkins? It's like a loose adaptation of the Kafka story.
No, I don't think so.
Well, it's kind of it basically. Long story short, it's the guy gets accused of something that he doesn't even know what the crime is, let alone whether or not he did it, and he keeps getting pushed into the insanity of bureaucracy surrounding this accusation that's been leveled against him. And it gets crazier and crazier, and it ends up with him like blowing himself up, and it goes from 0 to 100. And I kind of wish that they had gone that way with it, kind of like The Prisoner would, where it's not just they just keep pushing the scenario bigger and bigger and bigger until it breaks kind of itself,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So instead of again, they only got 40 minutes to do it, but instead of it just breaking because they found out, he realized that O'Brien's arm was not messed up when it should have been. If they kept pushing Bashir to see if he would react violently to be, that kind of thing where it push him to the edge and see how he reacts, and you get to the point where he's cornered, and then the kind of thing kind of falls apart a little bit.
The truth will come out when he sort of cracks from the pressure of everything.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, obviously that's not the way they wanted to go with it, and that's fine. But it was kind of like that kind of Total Recall type story. Really, surface level isn't the word I'm looking for, but it was like a light Total Recall where it's like, we're kind of going to do this, but it's not really the point of the episode. We're just kind of doing this so we can get to the end and tell you about this cool new thing we have.
Yeah. I mean, I think the strengths of this one are that I like the direction. I like the way it's done. It does have this sort of weird dream state to it that I have to assume at this point is intentional with the tone that they're going for. They're going for that paranoia kind of thing, but it comes across as so paranoid that it can't be real. And I like the acting. I think Alexander Siddig does a great job. I think that the guy who plays Sloan is fantastic in this. Like that. The
only thing I will say is, if the one acting note I would have given him is after he gets up and he's extremely tired, and then they're called to the meeting, and then they're like, okay, everybody has to go back to their quarters.
Yeah.
I would have said, okay, you should react as though that's the best news you've heard all day, because you are going to go right back to sleep, because that's how I felt. It was like, I was like, oh, that's like waking up and finding out that school's been canceled. It's like, oh, it's 7:30. I'm going to go sleep till 10.
That's probably the first clue that something's wrong. He yawns for about 3 scenes in a row. They're really, and it doesn't really, it's a weird thing that they really stress, because the payoff is just that they took him, to sleep deprivation, to make the interrogation a little bit easier. So it's like, it just felt like it was a weird amount of stress on that small little note that didn't need to go through multiple scenes, but it ended up doing that. And
I think overall, I liked it. Didn't blow me away, but I think I would have gone weirder with it. I think I would have pushed it a little bit harder. Like if they had kind of jumping off what I was saying a minute ago. Like if it had ended with continuing the Weyoun angle to the point where they had Weyoun like sending him on a murder mission or something, like trying to actually activate him.
Yep.
And see how he responds to that. I think that would have been kind of interesting, but obviously that's, I think if I was going to do that, I would have done a 2-parter.
Oh, you think this has enough to go 2 parts?
I think if you want to flesh it out and really, really get into, oh, maybe he's actually working for the Dominion, he doesn't know it. I think so. I mean, like I think you could have ended that first episode with them stealing him. And him showing up in the Dominion and then being like, oh, hey, buddy. Yeah, you actually are working for the Dominion. Dun, 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 or telling him that he's going to be activated and sent on a mission to blow up Deep Space Nine or some shit like that,
Because I have I actually don't like the way this one ends, really, at all.
Yeah.
I like this sort of conversation that they have about Section 31, but I don't like well, Mr. Bashir, next time we run into them, you're definitely going to be a spy.
Yeah.
I really don't like that. I wish it ended on more of a paranoid, like an X-File-y, like the truth is out there kind of thing. And the fact that they're trying, obviously, to serialize that story or just have it stretched through multiple episodes, at least, is really kind of an annoyance that I don't think is I think it's actually a disservice to Section 31. I do feel like the majority of our conversation is going to be about Section 31, and I'm trying to hold off from doing that right away.
Can we talk about how great it is that Star Trek understood the idea of tablet technology, but not the idea of storage space?
Yeah.
It's because at the beginning, Bashir's packing his shit together, and he's got like 5 tablets that he's packing into his thing. And I'm like, I don't know what you have on each one of those 5 tablets, but you don't need them, buddy.
They assume it's like Kindle. Like Kindles only have 2 gigs on each one because the book is 5 bytes or whatever. So they assume it's just Kindle storage just for everything in the future. You're going to need a lot of these tablets to keep coming.
Yeah.
through.
Could you? I don't. When I was younger, we had a computer that only it blew my mind because we had a computer that I think had 4 gigs of space on it. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine going back to this point in time and talking to anybody about the fact that you have a flash drive that has 100 gigabytes of space on it, and that like digital space is not really a thing anymore? Like it's not a quantifiable thing that has any value to it because it's unlimited. Like
or you don't need the storage. You can just pay a company to have your storage for you.
You don't even have to pay.
Yeah.
You open a Google email account and you've got 15 gigs or whatever worth of space. Mm-hmm. You know, it's crazy. It's like that Patton Oswalt bit where he talks about if he could go back in time to himself in 2002 or whatever, he wouldn't talk about politics or anything. He would talk about how iPods exist, and it's like, take every song you've ever wanted to listen to and put it on something about the size of a cassette tape. Now break that in half, and that's your machine. And they give them away free in gift baskets. It's the greatest piece of technology ever invented, and they just give it away.
I mean, it seems super dated at this point that your iPod had storage at all. You know, just because now everything's Spotify, so it's like there's no storage really on.
I do have problems with that, but that's for a different time.
Yeah. I guess we can just move into the Section 31 portion of this, which is the meat and potatoes of this. I think it's why the episode is kind of highly regarded. I think this is a sort of a post-airing bump up in respect for this episode, I believe. Mm-hmm. I think that if this episode came out and you just watched it as a standalone and you were unaware of the name Section 31, you would think I think it actually makes the episode seem stupider in a lot of ways. Like if this was a one-time appearance of this group, you'd say, what a weird kind of organization that feels, well, it's challenging Starfleet, like the TNG or TOS kind of ethos of the universe. What a weird, clunky thing to insert for just one 45-minute episode. So what did you want to say in context of Discovery versus DS9's Section 31? I will... Actually, I want to ask you a question to lead into this.
Sure.
What is the point of Section 31 in DS9? What's their goal? They say it in the episode. I'm just trying to... Oh,
well, I didn't know there was going to be a book report.
I'm not looking for a trick question. It's just like, what does Section 31 do?
They're just covert ops, right? Like, they're basically the CIA of Starfleet.
Sort of. Sloan says in this one that they identify threats to the Federation and then they deal with them.
Sure, yeah.
What is the point of Section?
More like the NSA. Huh?
What is the point of Section 31 in Discovery?
I
was expecting
a spin-off show
to allow Michelle Yeoh to continue on with his Star Trek career. I think that's kind of the big difference. And even if I'm not crazy about Section 31 here, they do have the difference between the two series is that I understand the point of what Section 31 is in DS9, and I'm not sure that they exist for any other reason than to be a reference into wear leather in Discovery. They wear leather here, so that's something that they carried on.
I was going to mention that. Like they don't do I mean, I guess they do a good job of making them seem imposing by dressing them all like 19th century butchers.
Yeah, I think they look like goth barbers
like,
or something.
Leather.
Yeah,
yeah. But no, I think you're right. I think so. That's a good lead into my thoughts about this compared to the way they handle it in Discovery. In that, when we were covering Discovery, at least early on, one of the things that we sort of jokingly said was, we didn't think the people who were writing it actually watched any Star Trek, or at least hadn't watched Deep Space Nine. And as we've gone through Discovery and as we've gone through Deep Space Nine, I actually feel like the show they did watch was Deep Space Nine, but they didn't get it.
Sure.
Because this episode is essentially the Ash Tyler story.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Yeah.
It's like they took this episode and they were like, "Oh, let's make an entire season arc out of this Manchurian Candidate type story. We can plug that in here."
But actually have it be the truth. Yeah, like have the Manchurian Candidate actually be the thing that's happening, as opposed to just the idea that this is what's happening.
Yeah, and then Section 31. Oh, that's great. Covert ops. We can use that. Awesome. Plug that in as an ominous group to reference. It seems like the stuff that they're doing in Discovery is referential of stuff that they did in Deep Space Nine, but they're not really taking into account the place of those things in the world of the universe of Deep Space Nine or the universe of Star Trek. It's just like everything else in Discovery. They're just grabbing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's being like, oh, this is cool, we should use that. Oh, this is cool, we should use this. Oh, that's a good reference we should make.
See, and to go off of that, let's stick with DS9 Section 31 for a little bit. I'm kind of torn about this in DS9. I think that they are a perfect encapsulation of a kind of DS9 idea. I don't know if it's a bridge too far, really, what they do.
My biggest problem with it is when he's explaining what it is, and he's like, yeah, we've been here since the start of the Federation, like 300 years ago.
Yeah, they're in the charter. They're Section 31 of the Starfleet charter of the Federation.
Yeah,
charter.
And it's like, okay, I guess. It just seems weird to have to quantify it by going back that far. I don't know what the point is, if it's supposed to be like they're the creation of a different era before Starfleet reached its potential or something like that.
Yeah, the thing that's odd about it is that, like, in all the other movies and TNG and stuff, like the first contact that initiates the Federation is seen as this huge changing point in like the outlook of humanity.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
To continue to have a like, oh, this is a new era, like we're friends with Vulcans, we're going to explore space. We also need a covert ops group here to make sure that everything's on the up and up. It feels like Section 31 to me feels more natural as we tried to do this the good way, but we had some problems, and so we had to create this group to deal with what we didn't anticipate to be problems about going out into space.
Yeah, totally. Or I would even go the other way and say it predates Starfleet.
Okay.
And say that, it's a holdover from a different era.
That that's a good idea.
That from a more arcane era that they just folded into as the governments and stuff were coming together to form Starfleet. They folded this idea into it. As sort of like a backdoor policy or something like that. Something that would be believably cynical for the creation of something like Starfleet, where it's because that something like this would be like, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but what are we going to do if the Vulcans decide they want to blow us up?
Right.
Well, we have to know what the Vulcans are up. There's going to be someone saying that.
Yep. It's very logical. I understand why Section 31 would exist. And as Odo says, all the other cultures in Star Trek have a secret ops group. There's the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar and everything. So
Roddenberry would have hated this.
Even this is a very un-Roddenberry thing, but I think it is very much a DS9 idea. I think they're a little heavy-handed with Bashir sort of going at the end, like, how are we going to live when we compromise our values with Section 31?
Yeah,
and it gets a little bit over the top, but I like the idea of Section 31. I think they're just a little bit too big of a thing, sort of like while they make sense in a narrative and technical level, the nuts and bolts of them doesn't really work for me. So it's one of those things that, like, I understand why they're brought into Discovery, because people are like, Section 31 are cool. They wear leather and they're under a cover and everything like that. But if they don't fit into the DS9 universe,
and they were talked about very openly.
Right. that's the other, like, that's the, I don't know if I mentioned it or I wanted to avoid when we were talking about Discovery, but the way that Section 31 is portrayed in Discovery is just along the lines of the spore drive. It's one of those things that's like, it doesn't make sense that this is why they're doing it this way.
Yeah. Did they wrap that up at the end of the second season? Was there in that stupid scene where they're like, let's never talk about any of this ever again? Were they like, let's not talk about Section 31 out loud to
except
anyone.
Tune in
ever.
on Tuesdays at 9:00 on CBS All Access to get more Black
seriously.
Ops type stuff. But what did you think about that? Or you can continue with the DS9 versus Discovery, or what your general thoughts about Section 31 would be. You sound unenamored with them, which is fine.
I think I think it's tough. Honestly, I think it's tough for me to get super excited about it because my first introduction to them was through Discovery.
Yeah.
And also, I do think there's a little bit of what you're talking about as far as, I mean, I know that they're going to come back, but at first blush, it's like, okay, that's kind of a cool idea. We'll see what happens with it. You know, it's those two things combined. It's tough for me to like lose my shit over the Section 31 stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're interesting. I'm going to be curious to see in what ways they come back. Cause like, I think what's kind of fun is they set them up in a way where, which is kind of why I agree with you about the thing at the end where Sisko's like, you will become a spy. That makes the reaction to them very aggressive, where I kind of think they set them up in a fun way where it's like at any point someone could say computer end program and what you're watching could be a Section 31 interrogation, right, or something, you know, created by Section 31 in order to derive information. Like that thing's kind of fun. I like that idea. But they seem to be aggressively going after them already. So I don't think that's going to happen. And if it does, cool.
Yeah, I guess we can just end with, as I said before, I think the best part of the episode is the reveal where Sloan explains what Section 31 is to Bashir and everything. What I like about it is that Section 31, and this is restating what we've already said, but I think it's worth saying, and I think it's what's important, is Section 31 to me makes sense in this DS9 universe. Like, I understand Sloan's arguments for Section 31 are fantastic. I think the way that he ties it into Dr. Bashir, do you think that any of the people that you saved cared that you lied about getting into medical school is a semi-brilliant turn of like what Section 31 is doing? And I think they actually represent a lot of like modern day politics where there's this kind of like, there's a certain group, particularly on the left, that have a kind of like a naivete about like internal like threats to the nation and things like that. Like it's the kind of like you have to just like get out of everyone's territory and just kind of like go. Everyone should leave everybody alone. And it's like the reason everyone is aggressive towards you is because you're aggressive towards them in the first place. And I think the Section 31 is a nice semi-rational counterpoint. Well, they are rational. They're a rational counterpoint to that idea that like the way that you are standing here now in this perfect universe, at least the TNG or the DS9 version of a perfect universe, is because of all this stuff that we've had to do in the background that you've been unaware of. And I think that that's something that happens in real life that people are unwilling to kind of think about. And I think it's nicely portrayed here. And I think they could have gone the bad way, which would Sloan just be this sort of mustache twirling villain, mad scientist kind of guy. And he's really not. He's a pretty rational character who you believe what he's talking about.
Well, they sort of, you know, I think the other swing on it, the more intense swing, is it's sort of the idea that was driving most of the post 9/11 fiction that really featured heavily heroes torturing the shit out of people.
Yeah, that's true.
It's this idea, and I mean, not even just fiction, just in real life. I mean, until people kind of came around to the fact that torture in all forms is not great. There was this kind of air of, well, you know, do you think people are going to care about how we got this information as long as we get this information? And which, you know, I think the rational answer is, if it's keeping you safe, most people probably don't care. But on the other hand, a lot of people were using that rationale in situations that weren't actually getting any information. Yep. You know, and that's where it gets really sinister.
Yes.
So it is the really interesting thing about that argument is that it can be used legitimately, but it can also be used as a rationalization for some pretty awful shit.
Yeah. No. Yeah. 100%. And I think that I think maybe they go in a kind of a strange direction where we've talked before about Bashir is the most TNG-ish of the characters, and he certainly feels that way here, where he's the one that's most alarmed by what's going on and is questioning.
Oh, he's the perfect choice. I mean, of all the people that they could have picked on Deep Space Nine to do this story with, he's absolutely the perfect choice.
Yeah,
like if you just run down the list, if it was Cisco,
Odo would be like, "Can I join?" yeah.
Odo would be like, "Well, how do I sign up?"
Yeah.
Cisco would have figured it out immediately and been like, "I totally, this makes total sense. I'm not surprised that this exists." Dax, I don't really know. Dex. This doesn't feel. It feels like it doesn't really affect Dax.
No,
at all.
I feel like Dax would just say like, "Oh, that's interesting," and move on to something. It's not a very Dax story.
Yeah, Worf, I feel like
Worf would be into
probably.
it.
Yeah, I think Worf would be into it. I think O'Brien. Well, even O'Brien might be kind of into it. I don't know. But yeah, Bashir is. I mean, Kira would ask to sign up probably.
Yep.
Bashir is the one that I think has that. Like you said, he's the TNG character, and so that's why it makes sense for him to be the one that they break this news to.
Yeah. I think
very interesting that way.
The thing with his point of view is that his point of view still comes across as a little bit naive to me. It's an interesting DS9ification of the Star Trek thing where I find myself somewhat more agreeing with Sloan than Bashir's point of view at this. And that would have been a very bizarre thing to say if this was a TNG episode. But I think that just where we've come with DS9 to this point, you kind of are like, well, yeah, like they're fighting this war against infiltrators who have shown that they can sort of disrupt what's going on Earth and everything like that. And we've seen there are worse things out there, like not everything is good. And it feels believable that this group would exist and that they would have this point of view. Bashir's point of view is I don't know what DS9 is saying about it with Bashir's point of view. It feels like the show actually feels that Bashir is slightly naive a little bit, but I don't know if they're just writing that because it's a Star Trek thing and they have to kind of push through this. I understand Bashir's got a point and he's right in the way that you're saying that you can't go too far with this, but like what's the worst things? You sound like you're defending Section 31, I guess. Section 31 in this is not particularly the horriblest institution that you could imagine, right? Like they go through these kind of very shady things and it feels like they're going to frame Bashir to some point, but they're really just kind of trying to get information. And they're obviously wrong the way that they go about it, but they're not as bad as you'd imagine that they could be. They could be written in a much worse way, I think. And that to me is the accomplishment of the episode, is it kind of walks through the middle and you end up with a decent episode that's not really sure which way to go.
Yeah. They definitely do make a choice about how you should view them, I think, by the way that they have them dress at the end.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not like, he doesn't explain the concept of Section 31 while he's sitting on the corner of a desk wearing like acid wash jeans and like an MC Hammer t-shirt.
Yeah, nice ascot. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's they definitely kind of leave it open to interpretation how you're supposed to view these guys. But
they're not they're not the Obsidian Order. They're not. I guess whether or not you consider this torture or not is kind of debatable, I guess. But I guess I wouldn't say that they're torturing O'Brien or anything like that. Like you
mean Bashir?
Yeah, sorry, Bashir. Like they're a human version of what the Obsidian Order could be, and they're better than that. Like the worst case would be if these guys were just the Obsidian Order, but humans who are kind of doing that kind of stuff, and that wouldn't feel necessarily true to what the show is and everything. But I don't know. I guess I'm having a hard time describing it, but I feel like they do a good job of just keeping their argument relatively sane against the backdrop of this Star Trek universe that says this is wrong. And well, yes, in a perfect universe, I would agree this is wrong. DS9's universe is not that universe, so I feel that it's okay, and maybe that's why the ending doesn't stick with me so well. Where they're like, we're going to hunt them down and sort this out. I would have preferred just they're out there. The universe is more complicated than we can understand it at some points. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, I feel like I think I agree. I think that Sisko's reaction at the end, I don't know, because I don't want to give Sisko so little credit, because it's really easy to paint him as someone who's like anti-Federation.
Yeah, I wouldn't paint him that way, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't either, but I think it's, as we've talked about, he's basically the test of the Federation's resolve, because even though he has his own personal thoughts about it, he always ends up being the one who who proves the ethos of the Federation correct, right. in a sort of interesting backwards way. And I think it would be easy to have him in this scene if you weren't thinking about that, and you were thinking more about it, mischaracterizing him as like, oh, he's the anti-Federation captain, or he's the cynical captain. I think it'd be easy for that episode to end with Bashir being like, "Can you believe these fucking guys?" and Sisko being like, "Actually, yes, I can."
Right.
And that's just how it is. You know?
Yeah. I think they do a good job of that. I know it's not real Sisko, but like the way that holodeck fake Sisko starts to doubt Bashir's story with all the evidence that's piling up like that. The problem with those turns is that I feel that because we've spent 150 episodes with the characters, you never believe that the turn would be that dramatic, and that's what kind of gives it away. That's a holodeck story. But yeah. I think that's true to Sisko's character.
That's an instance where I think it could have benefited from a longer runtime, because all of those guys have to turn on him at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like they all do it in the same way, which is not how that would really go. Like, you could do that, but I think if you had each one of them kind of take a shot at him in their own way, that would have been a little bit more believable.
Yeah.
But you only got 40 minutes to do this.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We're going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay will come back. We're going to read some patron thoughts. We'll give our final thoughts about Inquisition.
We're on the same team. We believe in the same principles that every other Federation citizen holds dear.
And yet you violate those principles as a matter of course.
In order to protect them.
Well, I'm sorry, but the ends don't always justify the means.
Really? How many lives do you suppose you've saved in your medical career?
What has that got to do with anything?
Hundreds? Thousands? Do you suppose those people give a damn that you lied to get into Starfleet Medical? I doubt it. We deal with threats to the Federation that jeopardize its very survival. If you knew how many lives we've saved, I think you'd agree that the ends do justify the means. I'm not afraid of bending the rules every once in a while if the situation warrants it. And I don't think you are either.
You've got the wrong man, Sloan.
I don't think so. In time, he'll come to agree with me.
Okay, everybody. So if you enjoyed the content today, you can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. You give a couple dollars a month and you get extra podcasts, you get extra videos, you get extra stuff. You can vote on what we cover, all that good stuff. And it helps continue to keep the show running, which is much appreciated. Our Captain Tiers on Patreon get a shout out at this point. It's Andrew Chirlog, Ben Douglas, Bradley Killens, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Pouch, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, Yarpy, Joint Mango, Kevin Reyes, Kyle Barrett, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elge, almost made it in one breath, Samuel Custer, Grim Santos, Sean Spinobi, Tark Latif, and Will Yates. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. Let's go to patron comments. If you're a patron, you can support the show and you can leave comments about upcoming episodes. We read them. Captain Quark says, Inquisition. I'd classify this episode as a must-watch since it introduces a fascinating clandestine organization, Section 31, which goes on to play a larger part in DS9's long-term storyline. Still is a lot to like here aside from that introduction. William Sadler's excellent performance as Sloan and the tactical mind games that Section 31 employs to test Bashir's loyalty were two highlights for me. My only real gripe with the episode is that it's, quote, all a dream holodeck illusion. It's all a dream holodeck illusion is a well that the writers have gone to many times before in both DS9 and TNG. So I found the twist to be predictable, even though I can see why Sloan employed it as a glorified interrogation tool.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Sure.
I think what's missing for me, I agree that they go back to this well a lot. I think why I was going the other way, where I was saying like, well, if they really pushed him or something, blah, 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 blah. I think the reason that I feel that way is because the way that they play it takes all of the stuff that has happened previously in the episode off the board, and it's just, oh, okay, yeah, it's just a holodeck. He's fine. But if they had used that to actually push him, and so at the end of that situation, when they reveal it's a holodeck, like, Bashir is fundamentally shaken by what has just happened to him.
Yep.
I think that would have much more impact as far as the way that things played out. It would feel less like just it was all a dream than it would be like the, for lack of a better example, the Federation version of There Are Four Lights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So are you saying that there's still a holodeck in that version that you're writing? That you've just...
Yeah, I think you could still do it. And I think it actually adds a really sinister aspect to what the holodeck can do.
Yeah.
If you're using it as an interrogation tool, and at the end, it's no less intense than any other physical or mental interrogation, This
is interesting because you've just kind of sparked in me something that I think would be like, to me, the reason that Section 31 here is not as bad as they could be is the worst way to do this is that whether or not this is a holodeck, they actually use the other cast members in this, and they're not holodeck versions of themselves. If Section 31 can make them doubt O'Brien, that to me is the dangerous aspect of what Section 31 can do.
I think that's kind of where I was going when I was saying I wish that Sloan actually had actually showed up at Deep Space Nine, because then if you can actually get him to start to convince other people that possibly Bashir is a traitor, that's where the danger comes in, and that's where they get really sinister. Yes,
and I think that maybe I appreciate the episode that it doesn't do that, and I like Sloane's kind of argument, but the way to portray them as a more sinister, the idea that they're going to hunt them down at the end of the episode makes more sense if they have that kind of capability, where they're seen as an organization that's not just protecting people, but is actively kind of undermining the true values of the Federation at the same time.
Exactly.
And they don't do that.
And I think that's another thing that bothers me about the way they use them in Discovery, because in Discovery, there's not really a pushback against Section 31.
No, they're cool with it. They love it.
Yeah, they just kind of acknowledge them and go, ugh, Section 31. Like there's an underlying kind of disdain for them, but there's no real pushback from
fear. There should be fear from them.
Yeah, at the very least. I mean, at the end of season 1, you've got Michael Burnham giving this massive speech about what Starfleet values are, and even though it wasn't earned or whatever, but it's Michael Burnham should be leading the charge against Section 31.
Right. Well, I'm glad we made that point. I think that's the point I was kind of stumbling around this entire podcast, trying to get to that point. I think that's where the episode made a choice, and I don't know if it's the right or the wrong, but it certainly impacts how you view Section 31 and what they're doing.
Yeah, Ash Tyler shows up, and it's like, oh, you changed schools, I see. It's not like, oh, you're now working for this clandestine organization that we technically shouldn't even know exists.
They're not even clandestine in Discovery. They're just out there. Yeah.
They're so out there that in Discovery, they don't even wear comm badges. But in, did I say Discovery? In Deep Space Nine, they don't even wear comm badges. In Discovery, they're so well known that if you see their comm badge, you go, oh, hey, Section 31. Nice.
Cool. Good to see you guys. What's going on? It's very
I got to admit, though, Section 31 badge is pretty rad.
The black badge.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Very cool.
It's a very simple twist on something. They also invented, obviously, the tap communicator, as Discovery tells us.
That's true. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Which, actually, I will give them credit for that, because
that makes sense.
That is something that feels fairly realistic, in that, all the shit that we use now that's ubiquitous to life, most of it started as a military project.
Yeah.
So the idea that Section 31 has the tap communicators before anybody else makes perfect sense. I think that's a good detail. I like that a lot.
I think it makes sense. It's a hidden communication method. It's a piece of jewelry that you have a microphone in, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that works. Samuel S. says, Inquisition, a good episode with a cheap ending. I like episodes that are told from a single point of view, and this one definitely qualifies. The buildup of Bashir's arrest is very eerie, and you can tell something is off, but you can't put your finger on it. Although the ending reveals that this was Star Trek equivalent of It's Just a Dream, it does deflate the episode a little bit. Still, I enjoy watching it. A 4 out of 5. Zam Nuclear Wessel says, nice guy Sloan from the beginning of the episode reminds me of Detective Willem Dafoe in American Psycho. Black Leather Sloan from the end reminds me of gang leader Willem Dafoe in Streets of Fire.
Nice. I like that. Very good.
Matthew Ross says, what a show. Actually, this episode shows me why there is a new iteration of Section 31 is terribly conceived. No one has heard of 31 despite everyone talking about it in Discovery. Anyway, the idea that there was a dirty tricks unit when I first saw this made me annoyed as it being against the grain of what Star Trek was. Although I like Sloan and all the subterfuge. However, I knew that nothing was going to happen as Bashir is a main character. I was fooled that the characters we saw were all fakes, but that means that Section 31 has some overly detailed files on everyone all the time. If you buy that, maybe Starfleet is deluded and under the secret organization's thumb all the time, and the show is showing their deluded adventures while the black-clad officers do the real work. That idea breaks the entire story concept for me, more akin to Men in Black, literally, than Star Trek. Cardinal Doomsday says, be careful what you wish for, Julian. Worrying how a Black Ops group can take over DS9 easier than the Jem'Hadar. A genuinely eerie vibe is ruined by the stupid Dominion holodeck scene. I've made no secret of my dislike for Section 31, but now that Georgia was getting a spin-off series, I like it even less. A 2 out of 5. What happened to it? Oops, let me find this. What's going on? Chad Wiley, is this right? What happened? Control F. There we go. All right, we're back. Chad Wiley says,
Control. It got you.
This is one of those episodes that I can bring up as evidence for why DS9 is a better show than TNG. On DS9, the conspiracy is a group of rogue Starfleet agents willing to compromise their own morality in service of safeguarding the Federation, and they're led by the excellent William Sadler. In TNG episode's Conspiracy, we have a group of aliens trying to take over the Federation for reasons, and they're led by a giant earwig. It's true. There is no conspiracy. Dwayne Hackett says, the origins of the never-before-seen Section 31, which I must admit at the time of airing I had thought, wait, why didn't the Federation have a super covert intelligence branch? The idea of clandestine operations to ensure the safety and security of the populace is a true-to-life fact as they exist in virtually every powerful nation, even today. I would have loved, however, if this was a Season 4 episode to give it more weight on the larger universe. As it is now, it feels like something the writers tacked on at the end of a season when they realized they needed one more episode. Inquisition from Kyle Barrett. Nobody expects the Section 31 Inquisition. I also realized I didn't get your joke last week, Clay, when you said that.
Yeah, you didn't.
Because you didn't say Spanish. I think I missed out. To take place entirely on the holodeck. It's usually a twist I don't like, but here I think it's great, and it only adds to the show a level of subterfuge and secrecy regarding Section 31. William Sadler is a great guest star, and Alexander Siddig, who I feel doesn't get enough love as an actor, gives a great performance. All in all, tippy-top stuff. And ever since hearing Section 31 is interested in Bashir, in part because of his interest in spy holodeck adventures, I've been watching James Bond in constant rotation in the hopes that MI6 will eventually get in touch. So far, that's no luck.
That is a funny detail where it's like, well, we assumed you were the spy because you enjoy spy stuff.
Maybe we're not as good an organization as we thought. Thank you, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about Inquisition. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
4.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah.
You liked it. You liked the whole, like, I think it's a 4 the last couple scenes, but before that, I find it not too great. This is not a big difference between a 3 and a 4, at least in terms of our scale, but I'm surprised you're giving it a 4.
Yeah, I think it's, even though it's not, I didn't absolutely love it. I think it is more interesting and more well done than a lot of the 3s that we've covered lately.
Yeah.
And it's adding a new thing to the mythos that seems to be something that sticks around for a long time and is an interesting addition.
I like the idea. I just don't. Yeah, I think it's one of those. I like the idea, but the execution kind of kills it for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel the same way, but I give it extra points for trying. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll give it a 3. I think it's a very solid 3. I think it's a very good episode, and I think that what they're doing here is really good. It's just it does not grab my attention for the first opening bits of it. That's it. Clay gives it a 4. I give it a 3. You guys can check out all the content down below. There's all these links in the podcast blurb or on the video description. You can go to the website at thepenskypodcast.com. Everything is right there for you. It's a one-stop shop. Check out patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Support the show there. There's Teespring. Well, you can get all your t-shirts and stuff like that. We have some new ones. There's a long way to go for a ham sandwich. Just made it up there. And then there's the failed Dr. McCoy catchphrase, I never said that. So we now have a t-shirt for that one, too.
What a stupid catchphrase.
I never said that. That's it, guys. Well, Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
No. Well, Kickstarter's still going. Kickstarter for Bloody Hell still going strong. We're up over 17,000 at this point, and we will continue to be up until the first week of September. So thank you again to everyone who's thrown in for that. And we'll be adding stuff as we go, new rewards and all that kind of fun stuff. So, yeah, if you want to check it out, please head over to bloodyhell.com, BLOODYHEL.com.
Yeah, thank you for supporting the Kickstarter, guys. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for listening. And we're going to be back next week with In the Pale Moonlight, which is something that a lot of people have been waiting for to get to this episode, I think. So we'll see how Clay feels about it as a newbie to this series.
Is it just 40 minutes of the Tim Burton Batman movie?
Basically, yeah, it's the Burton it's the Burton soundtrack while Cisco sits listening to it on a old record player. I think
I would 100% watch that. You know what I was thinking the other day? Has there? I mean, maybe it's out there, and I just haven't searched hard enough for it. I was looking for stuff to listen to when I was going to sleep because I was having trouble sleeping, and I was thinking, has anybody actually? My first thought was I need to get an audiobook read by Patrick Stewart because obviously that voice is, you know, it's got a certain tenor to it that's great for sleeping.
Yeah.
And so I actually found he actually does, there's an Audible download of him doing A Christmas Carol, which I thought was perfect, but I got it and he's too good. His acting is he's too engaged.
Engaged. Good pun there. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So I was thinking, I was like, man, you know what I need? I wish someone would do like an hour-long cut of Picard dialogue, but not the intense stuff, just where he's talking normally.
Yeah.
So you've got Picard talking about banal, normal stuff, and then you've got the sound from the ship in the background. That would be the greatest thing to put me to sleep ever.
There's a Bedtime Stories for Cynics audiobook. He narrates one of the stories in it, I guess, which is interesting. Yeah, but yeah, they do just need a low cut of all of Picard's like B-roll dialogue, basically, like the non-story related, him talking about the shields and the engines and things like that.
Or just expository stuff like ready room scenes or the conference room scenes where he'd just be like, so if we come in too close to the sun, you're saying that the shields will disintegrate, you know, like just that boring shit.
We'll get Patrick Stewart on that, I guess. We'll see. Do you think he'll do a lot of yelling in Star Trek Picard? We'll have to see if that will be a series that we can get some cuts out of for. But anyway.
Yeah, there's nothing in the trailer yet, but...
Right. There's still time. Guys,
there's still time to draw the line wherever he decides to draw the line.
Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We'll be back next, or in a couple days with In the Pale Moonlight. Until then, see ya.